I started this journey in 2010 when I did my first road trip from London to Delhi. One day I had this really a realization, a calling that this is not for you anymore. And I decided to pack my bags, move back to India and start an expedition company. We go and we recce these places. We are fortunate enough that this is part of our work to go and see these incredible places and then take people and go and visit those places again.
If you're someone who loves taking long road trips and if your travel is all about going to different places, exploring different cultures, meeting communities, and it's all about the thrill that comes in between, then I think you're at the right video because today we are sitting with Tushar Agarwal, who's the co-founder of Adventure Overland, a company that lets you have all these experiences and also takes care of the environment. And welcome, Tushar, firstly. Rather than me talking more and more about Adventure Overland and your journey as a traveler, I have read, I've seen your videos, and as we can see over here, lot of travel stuff that you have done. Yeah. What's your journey been like, and what was the vision behind it?
Nisa, I started this journey in 2010 when I did my first road trip. I used to work as a software engineer living in London, before that in Japan, in America. 12 years I did in IT. And in 2010, I did a road trip from London to Delhi via Western Europe, Eastern Europe, Ukraine, Russia, China, Kailash Mansarovar. And after completing that trip, I went back to London, back in my software programming job. But my heart was not into that job anymore, and all the flashes of these landscapes were coming back to me. And one day I had this really a realization, a calling that this is not for you anymore. And I decided to pack my bags, move back to India, and start an expedition company. During that transition phase, in when I found Sanjay, and instantly we clicked and made a trip to India to meet him. We became friends instantly. And the day after we met for the first time, uh, it gave me so much confidence. I went back to London. I packed up everything and shifted to India just 2 months after meeting Sanjay for the first time. And 3 months later, we had started Adventures Overland.
I actually wanted to understand one small thing. So, there's a lot of global travel that has been a part of your journey. I want to focus on India right now. I am really interested in knowing that what was your most grateful or most wholesome experience that you had while traveling in India? Because you think a lot of times that okay, go to one place, this place, that place, but that what is that experience that you had when you're like, oh my god, this is beautiful, this is amazing. This is what I live for. What is that one thing you had?
For me, the see, when you travel, whether in India or abroad, I'll come to India. Uh, I always say that there's a saying I believe in, which goes like, uh, if you reject the food, fear the religion, ignore the customs, and avoid the people, then you might as well stay at home. So I truly and very passionately believe in this saying, and this applies to wherever you travel in India or abroad. Wherever I go, I always travel with an open mind and an open heart, because if you travel like that, if you embrace people, you always see that people embrace you back. And this is true whether you are in California or you are in anywhere in India or in Africa or wherever. Coming to India, for me, my favorite place in India is definitely the Lahore and Spiti Valley region in Himachal. That's where I have a lot of fond memories of, and that's one place where I go every year. We've been doing adventures overland for around 12 years, and I think apart from 1 or 2 years in COVID, there's not been a single year where I have not gone to Spiti Valley, because that place just calls me. And it is what I love about that place is that it still maintains that simplicity. The landscapes are still virgin and beautiful. The people are very simple. The general population of the Spitian people is only 20,000. And I always tell everyone in our team also that Spiti is where we truly started from. So in that first year, I remember we were driving through this place called Dhankar Monastery, and it's a small village, and there's a beautiful 900,000-year-old monastery perched on top of a cliff. It's a beautiful monastery, and we were crossing that village town, Dunker village, and there was a major landslide that happened. We had about 15 cars with us, and people from all over India, some British people, they were all in that convoy with us, and we got stuck. We couldn't go back towards Tabo because there was a landslide behind us and there was a landslide ahead of us. So we were now stuck in Dantar. Dantar is a small village. It's built on a step like this, and there are small huts on that step from top to the bottom of the hill. So it was already 7 p.m. It was really rain was coming down, but we had to accommodate all these people somewhere, our guests. So we went from one village home to another, requesting them, "Can you please accommodate our guests?" Not even one villager said no. So we had about 25 people. Let's say there were uh, two, three in one car or one family or one group of friends. So we took about 10 or 12 village homes and accommodate everybody in those 10 12 homes. And not only did the villagers accommodate them, they even gave them dinner, they gave them bed, they gave them breakfast. And it was an experience that was not planned. But that is the experience that I remember even today after 10 years.
I think that's also what you take back from your travel. Yes, that's the memories that you take back. You don't take back a beautiful place or something a lot of time, but this is something as you said you remember for 10 years.
It is always these unplanned things that happen on a road trip that you remember rather than the planned things. Uh, and I think it applies to everybody, including you also. When you go on any trip, there is a certain plan. You're staying in certain hotels, you visit in certain places. But if some unexpected conversation happens with a stranger, or if something untoward happens that was not supposed to happen, you will always remember that because it will give a story, it will create a story. And when we come back from our trips, or when we meet our friends and family, uh, we tell them stories that udhar ye hua tha, udhar wo hua tha. We tell them stories. So it's always stories we seek for. Is also another saying, I don't know if I'm getting it right, that uh, travel makes you speechless and then turns you into a storyteller. So that's what travel does. But that will happen if you would travel with an open mind. Then you will have so many experiences because experiences are waiting at every corner for you.
That's actually very insightful. Also, over the years, I wanted to know that you would have taken so many road trips. So, how has the concept of adventure and sustainability, how has these two things changed over the years? How has your vision changed over the years?
Sustainability has been in our vision and in our minds right from the beginning, since we started Adventures Overland, even before that. Like I told you, I did a road trip in 2010 from London to Delhi. Even at that time, uh, what I had done was because I used to live in London that time, I found a company that could offset the carbon emissions produced by my car. I had a Jeep Cherokee petrol version, which I had bought secondhand for that trip, and I knew it is a gas guzzler. And I knew I going through fragile environments like Mount Kailash and Mansarovar Lake and lots of other places in Eastern Europe and even Russia and China and Nepal. And I didn't want to uh, leave uh, those carbon emissions or carbon footprint. I wanted to do this trip in a responsible, sustainable way. And even though the awareness was not there, but in my mind, I was very conscious that I don't want to leave any such footprint from this trip because this trip was going to be a life changing event for me. I knew that. And I wanted all boxes ticked. So I found a company that time, also some European company, I think. They had a calculator and they told me to put my car details and kilometers and distances. And they calculated that, okay, this is the carbon emissions you will produce on this trip. And based on our calculations, you should plant so many trees which will offset the carbon emissions. And I believed them and I paid for it. And they gave me a certificate and they planted trees. They were working, they had some tie up in Africa. So they planted trees somewhere in Kenya and I got to see a location that it was being planted. So that's what it was. And that really stayed with me. That little experience of doing the carbon, I still have that certificate. So, and I was very clear that whenever, that time I didn't even have a thought of starting Adventures Overland. But I was very happy that I was able to do it, and it was so user friendly. So when we started Adventures Overland, uh, offline Sanjay and I were doing this in an unorganized way, but it was always in the mind that we must implement it uh, in the day-to-day running of the business on all our trips, and we should aspire to become a carbon neutral company in all aspects. It is not easy. It is easy to say it. Uh, it can be used as a marketing gimmick. A lot of companies do that. Uh, we are not doing that. We are not even charging our customers for offsetting their carbon footprint. We are very clear that we are going to offset all the carbon footprints uh, for all the cars on all the trips that we do throughout the year, because we take it very seriously. And I think it should be taken even more seriously now. And travel industry uh, is, I think, one of the biggest contributors to generating carbon footprints around the world, with all the, not just the cars, all modes of transportation, airlines, ships, trains, cars. We may be moving slowly towards EV, uh, but the reality is that today, uh, at least in India, a lot of most of the long distance travels is petrol and diesel cars. So I think we should do our best to offset our carbon emissions. So all the trips that we organize, on all those trips, we have very clear mandate for our teams that we are offsetting 100% carbon emissions of all trips. In addition to that, we have now designed an in-house calculator based on our experiences and having worked with many different NGOs over the years, how they make their calculators. We have made our own calculator, which we are going to encourage all, at least road trippers, because that's the language we understand and that's the space that we have been in for the last decade or more. That at least the road trippers, whether they are traveling with Adventures Overland or not, doesn't matter, but we want to give them a very easy to use, friendly solution in form of a calculator, where you just go on the website, you open that page, you select your car, you select your engine size, you enter the distance you're going to travel. That's it. You enter 3 4 parameters, and it will calculate for you that how much carbon emissions or carbon footprints you're going to produce, and in order to offset that, how many trees you should plant, which we are going to do on their behalf. We have tied up with some NGOs to do that, and they will be given a certificate for that. Their money goes straight to the NGOs. The NGOs issue them an income tax certificate, a tax redemption certificate, and they will also get a location, a geotag location, which they can go physically go and see what is happening there, what their money is doing.
Okay, so I mean, any traveler can do this even if they don't take a trip.
Yes, yes, any traveler. So we're going to we're going to start a campaign in some time where, let's say you're going on a trip with your friends and family. Let's say you're going to, I don't know, you're going to Jaipur. So it's let's say 250-kilometer drive on a straight plain highway. Let's say you're going in a Grand Vitara car. So you just say Grand Vitara, it's a petrol car, whatever the CC is, and total distance is 500 kilometers going and coming. That's all you do. You go on a simple 2-day trip. It will tell you, okay, you should plant, for example, let's say 5 trees, and this is the cost of one tree. So let's say the total amount is 1,000 rupees. So you just pay 1,000 rupees by entering your card details. That money goes straight to the NGO. It doesn't come to us. The money goes straight to the NGO. You get a certificate issued from the NGO, and you get a receipt and tax rebate certificate also.
It's a very good initiative. I also want to understand that uh, on your trips, how do you, apart from the aspect of planting trees, how do you make sure that the trips are responsible and sustainable?
Take many initiatives. It requires a lot of education also. It also requires a lot of practices implemented from our side. A small example is giving people bottles. Initially, what we would do is, everybody, it's easy. You go to a shop, buy water bottles, and put one 24-pack bottle in each car. Yeah. And that's it. We don't do that anymore. What do you do is, we've made this sleek, beautiful bottles, 1 liter each. We engrave the name of the participant on it. We give them a bottle as part of our merchandise with some other gifts that we say. and we tell them, please fill your water bottle before you come to your car every morning from the hotel. So these kind of things make a really huge difference as you go along in educating people also, but you have to lead by example.
Okay, quickly, if I had to ask you, like your 5 top tips that you will give to any traveler who loves taking road trips on how to make their travel more sustainable and more responsible.
Seeking plastic is very important, not to use water bottles. In fact, a lot of states in India have now, I think, like Sikkim is one of them, ban plastic. Uh, Definitely, we should not use it. Uh, Please use the carbon calculator and offset your carbon footprints. That is very, very important. We should not reuse. Take as many people in your car as you can. We try to club 4 people in a car. Of course, we never encourage more than 4 people. So that is very important to do. We are not able to organize EV road trips yet, but we are in the process of launching at least one EV road trip, which there are certain countries in the world where the EV infrastructure is very good now, where you have chargers everywhere, like Norway. Norway is very good. In fact, in Norway, when we went there last year, there are fjords in Norway, water bodies which you have to cross. So we used to cross 2 to 3 fjords every day on ferries. And these ferries are 100% electric ferries, which I never seen. They are completely silent, and you're putting your car in that ferry, and that ferry is taking you on a 20-minute trip from this end to that end, but they are 100% EV, so no pollution. So that is fantastic. So, a country like Norway is where you can do a EV road trip. We are also taking initiatives where we are trying to start shorter trips where we can collaborate with all the manufacturers who are launching more and more EV cars every day to go on weekend drives, take weekend drives with clubs or our trips, and take people on small trips like maybe from Delhi to Uttarakhand, and have some PV stations on place to tell them, okay, slowly you can start building the confidence of buying EV cars for road trips as well. Because when I drive a car, I mean, every day, whenever I do my car, whether home, work, wherever, I am in a habit of being very gentle and easy with my car. I'm never rough in my drive. I never accelerate. So those things are very important to follow. If people start following those kind of tips, and you're going to create a page about that, how to get the maximum out of your own car or out of your rental car. Yes, okay, you can't get an EV car everywhere, or whatever car you're driving every day, your own car. If you follow 2, 3 easy steps, it will make a major impact not only on your wallet, but it will become a very sustainable way in which you're driving also.
I think from the perspective of when these travelers go on that long journey,
Yeah.
what are the experiences that they get?
Generally, what experience do they get? Oh, okay, I can talk about that for hours. So, see, firstly, we organize road trips in far-fetched corners of the world. Like in India, we do Spiti Valley, Ladakh, which have become very popular now. So, northeast of India, we go to places like Namibia, Alaska, Iceland, Morocco, Jordan, Kyrgyzstan, the Gobi Desert in Mongolia. So, first thing is to provide trips in those places where people may not feel comfortable going on their own. You provide them a safety net of a convoy where you're going in a group. So you're going in a group, but you have the privacy of your own car. So on these trips, there's exploring a certain terrain through beautiful landscapes, meeting like-minded people, and making new friends with whom you can go on more trips in the future. Seeing a country outside of the main cities and interacting and getting really immersive cultural experiences with the people, sleeping in a village, going in somebody's home for food, or talking to a farmer, sitting in a roadside shack and having a coffee or a tea. Like recently, I went to a volcano in Ethiopia called Etta Ale. It's a volcano that erupted 100 years ago. It is still lava is still coming out of that volcano, and I was standing as two as we are right now, and it was a mind-blowing experience, and it was really hot, uh, and the my phone completely heated and cooled off. But I was seeing and that volcano was burning at I don't know how many thousand degrees, and I was looking at it, witnessing it right in front of my eyes. We are fortunate enough that this is part of our work to go and see these incredible places, and then take people and go and visit those places again. So we try to find these kind of unexplored places where we like to take people, but in a very sustainable and responsible way. We always encourage people to try the local food, because the local food experience is also very important part of the overall enriching experience of the place where you are. So food is also very important as part of the whole experience.
And that actually sounds very inciting to be okay. This is a kind of that you can take. And you said that you take a whole, like, it's a whole driving experience where you take a lot of cars. Yeah. And it's a whole convoy. So, my next question actually is how do you blend luxury with sustainability?
See, one is the offsetting the carbon footprint of the cars. The other thing is that we try to sometimes look for properties which are already very conscious about sustainability. There are certain examples I can give. Like there's a property we use in Jordan. It's it's an eco lodge. In that property, there is no electricity. It's completely made out of wood. All the food is organic. They grow their own vegetables. They grow their own fruits. When you go in the property, there's one little bulb that is solar powered in your room, and you have to eat dinner at 6 p.m. while it is still daylight, because when the sun sets, you will only get a candle in your room and in the dining hall. So the entire property is lit up only with the candles or with a little bulb in your room or in your bathroom with solar. So that is a 100% sustainable property. And it is an initiative. You have to be very brave to take an initiative like that and to build a property like that. But then you also need to have people coming and staying in these properties. Only then the property can survive and sustain itself. So we look for these kind of properties, and we take people and make them have these kind of experiences as well. We stay in similar organic properties which are more sustainable in Ladakh also, and in other places in Argentina also. So finding these kind of properties is also very important, which are already doing their bit, and it is our job as a travel company, as a tour operator, to work with them, to support them, and to give them business. And these properties are not, you said luxury.
Yeah.
They provide luxury. They are not basic. So when you'll be surprised when you go in a property like that how luxurious these properties are, and the kind of materials they use to build those properties. Mostly these properties are built using local materials, the local stones or the local wood, local sand. So they build the properties using all the local materials which are generally suitable for that environment anyways.
I think now also experiential tourism is sort of the future travel right now. Adding more in that, I just have few last questions. A few last questions. No, but okay. So I want to understand from you that as a avid traveler, as a person who runs a travel company, what are some advices that you'll give to a general traveler on how to make their next adventure trip more responsible and more sustainable?
I think lot of factors come in play here, that if you want to be more responsible and more sustainable, you have to see what kind of flights you are taking, the kind of clothes you wear, where they come from, the kind of car you're driving, the kind of place you're visiting, the kind of accommodation where you're staying, the kind of restaurants you're visiting for food, the kind of water you're drinking. It's everything that you're doing on a trip is having an impact on the environment. Like there are certain restaurants that we recommend sometimes that you go to these restaurants. These restaurants are run by villagers, or they are run by communities, or shop in these areas, because in these areas you will get local artisans coming from villages of that country and selling their produce. If you are able to, just like we are making a very user friendly calculator, if we are able to define these kind of tips, like you can have a packing, you can get lots of apps which will give you packing tips that the things you should pack or restrict it. So we are in the process of also creating a module which will tell you sustainability tips like that.
As you said, that you can't just tell people, okay, don't enjoy your trip, do this, do that. You can't take a book sort of thing. So, on that note, I want to understand from you quickly that what should travel be for anyone out there?
See, for actually what traveling is for me, and traveling is about coming back with the memories of having been somewhere where that place should have an impact on you, but the place can only have an impact of you if you allow that place to have an impact on you. At least go for 2 days out of the city, stay in a small village, and because those 2 3 days outside the city will give you so much breathing space. You are away from the locals also in the city, or away from the tourists also, and if you're just walking around in these places, you would have so many varied experiences entire your entire day, that you will be uh, filled with emotions about the experiences that you've had.
So, I think in the end, it's all about pushing yourself a little out the comfort zone, taking out the tourist hat, yes, having the traveler's hats, and living like a local. That's the best way to experience right now. Thank you, Tushar. I had a wonderful and insightful conversation. And I hope everyone watching this video also understood how do you need to plan your next road trip, how to make it responsible and sustainable, and even if you are not a road trip traveler, how can you still make your travel experience something that you take back with yourself. Thank you, Tushar. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.